So a lot of data science work is predictive. It tells you that given a situation, this is what will happen, which is super valuable and what I think all of us were kind of trained on. But once you have the information about what's going to happen, the natural next thing is, well, I want something different to happen. How do I change it? The statistics are further along. The data scientists are working on it, which prescribes an action and gives you a quantitative estimate of the impact if you give an associated behavior. And so that's something we're really looking at because we want to know what to do in this next situation.
Hello and welcome to the AI Master Group podcast, featuring the people who are building the future of AI in their work today. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Today, I'm very happy to have as our guest Zach Elewitz, who is the Senior Director, Head of AI at Fortune Brands. He's also a member of the Board of Advisors at Venture College, part of Texas A&M. Prior to that, he was Director of Data Science at WEX. Zach has a PhD in mathematics. Welcome, Zach.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
It's great to have you here. My goodness, we met not that long ago in Boston at the Chief Data and Analytics Officer Conference. And I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your journey from a PhD in mathematics to the head of AI at Fortune Brands.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, I have a PhD in a very theoretical area of mathematics and an MBA as well, which my particular journey had enough letters after my name to convince people at Ernst & Young, the consulting company, to bring me on, even though I didn't have a lot of those skills that they were really looking for. It's where I really learned to code. It's where I learned to think about business problems. And one of the most important things for me is where I learned to speak about technical matters to non-technical people and understand the real value of that. After my role there, I had a number of individual contributor roles, machine learning engineering, data science, data engineering across a number of different companies, like Pearson, where I was building educational products that were helping teachers understand their students before grades potentially dropped, simulating Medicare policy for the federal government. I started my own very small trading company, which was really cool because working with a small team building the stack up literally from ground up, and also worked at Neiman Marcus where we were trying to anticipate customer lifetime value for a luxury brand in the middle of a global pandemic. In my previous role, I was at WEX, the payment processing company, where we're building a lot of really powerful foundational data science models around fraud and getting people engaged with their health savings accounts. But with the growth of AI, as most people think about it now, it was really great building the team up from 2 to, I believe now it's in the teens, and having those first Gen AI use cases and now full-fledged Gen AI products. Currently, I'm at Fortune Brands Innovations, where my formal title is Senior Director of Data Science, but I lead AI here, and we have a lot of really amazing high-impact use cases with a company and a team that I'm very proud of.
Wow, that is a great overview. And I've mentioned Fortune Brands a couple of times already now, but actually Fortune is probably better known to the average person by the actual consumer-facing brand names that it sells under. Can you describe the brands and the markets that you address?
Absolutely. So there are 3 sorts of markets: security, outdoors, and water. So we have brands like Moen, House of Rohl, Masterlock, Therma Tru, SentrySafe, Yale. And so one of the reasons I really was excited about this job was having so many different sorts of data gives you the opportunity to have so many different sorts of tools and analyses.
So let's talk about these projects that you're doing, in-house projects that you've mentioned, obviously need to have a return on investment just like anything else. So, in a world of uncertainty, how do you pick the projects that you decide to go after?
There tends to be two big things that I focus on, and I've found higher up leadership tends to focus on as well. First is major financial impact. Revenue tends to be a lot sexier than cost savings, but both are really impactful. And I'm not interested in I'm keep I hope people keep in mind if they're listening that my bias is for major organizations. Fortune Brands is a Fortune 500. My organization before this had, thousands of people working there. I have a limited number of data scientists, so I'm really only interested in working on a project if we're thinking about the financial benefit, if we're talking about millions of dollars a year. Otherwise, it isn't worth the time because there's going to be another opportunity where I can 10x the impact of my data scientists. So where I can have millions of dollars of revenue added, save millions of dollars, or just as importantly, really impact the ways of working of the organization. So can I make us perform better? Or can I greatly enhance my customer experience? Because at the end of the day, the customer and the product are what we should be focusing on. So those are the kind of general areas I really, really focus on. And if I can't articulate the impact, even if my estimates may be a little bit off at the end of the day, then it's not worth doing.
Hmm. And giving that as a context, what kinds of problem statements are you focused on right now, and how do you measure the impact of those?
There are a couple really cool problems I'm working on right now. One is a product that actually sits on the main water line of your house. And what it does is it identifies as a catastrophic leak is happening in your home and then will shut it off in real time to prevent your entire home from being damaged or destroyed. And so it's a fascinating data science problem because you can't immediately shut off the water because you use water in your day to day, and it makes sense that lots of water events would happen and they look very different. And finding that balance between true protection and limiting interruptions to your water service. And we've had a 96% reduction in paid claims as a result of this product as compared with individuals who don't have this installed in their homes. So it's been a very efficacious product, but we still want to keep pushing it to that next level. Another area is sentiment analysis. Amazon has some good stuff about, oh, this is a 4.5, and they give you the little bit of summaries at the top on keywords that people are talking about, but that isn't the sort of insights that our internal category managers are really looking for. They want to really be able to understand what exactly is good or not good, and they need higher level themes and lower level insights as well. And so what we do is we actually have tiers of granularity of information, and we can rank them by either positive or negative so you can see what people care about most. We have a temporal component to it so you can see emerging trends, which is fantastic because let's say hypothetically there was a problem when we had an intervention, we should see the proportion of people that are giving constructive criticism about a particular element going down. And if there is an emerging issue or risk coming up, we should see that proportionally increase. So it really helps our people keep their finger on the pulse and get to those reviews the fastest. And this is really important because analysts are spending, tens of hours a month trying to understand this and not able to get that aggregate view, whereas now they can focus on the real problems that people are seeing, and they can look at it across, the more than dozen brands and thousands of different product varieties that we have. The third area that I'm focused on is actually our global supply chain. We have manufacturers and distribution centers all over the world, and trying to coordinate that is a monumentous task because it's not just, hey, Bob, when do you need this? We are impacted by things you don't even think about. Houthis in the Red Sea, not getting political, but their activity did disrupt service. If the Panama Canal were to be blocked, if COVID were to happen again, all of those things, we need to be able to understand very, very quickly how to respond in those situations. And so we have data scientists building out a control tower, and we've had some really amazing successes this year with that, to help us and help our supply chain organization decision in moments of uncertainty.
Well, each of those use cases you described could be a whole podcast in itself. I would love to deep dive into every single one of those. The sentiment is especially interesting. The water flow is very interesting because there's recall, and how do you what is the measure that you're using there, and of course the control tower on supply chain. That is an enormously complicated task that you took on. Very interesting. So these are things that you're working on right now. Now, let's think about maybe a proof of concept that you stood up in the past where the results looked interesting. So you decided to move forward with it. Can you describe what that journey looked like from that point on to scale and implement in a full business context?
Yeah. I think maybe a more true product, and to bring up another use case, would be at an old organization I was at. For context, this organization basically gave out credit cards that had benefits around the experience of owning a fleet of vehicles, and maintenance, oil changes, gas, and then some other services associated with it. And one of the services we did, since we offered credit cards and we make money every time someone uses the credit cards, is if you had bills that you had to pay regularly, and you wanted to automate them, we would do the payment for you, because that guaranteed that you used our card rather than someone else's. And that had a really, really major financial impact for us. The initial system a couple of years ago, well, first version years before that, was people calling and doing all of this. Then eventually they instituted an RPA system to do this, which was a very reasonable next step. But the problem with RPA is it doesn't scale. Every time you have a new biller, a new vendor, you have to completely lay out the decision tree. It is completely inflexible to change. So that you call AT&T and they say, we've recently had a change to our phone system. That actually does happen some places, and they will sometimes intentionally change it to mess up systems like this. And so RPA systems will break when they make those changes, and so we need something that's a little more flexible. And so large language models are really, really excellent tools for this, because lots of organizations have, like in our use case in particular, we had years and years of transcription chats to be able to show the model. We have them in a consistent format. We have them across different vendors, and it was one use case with lots and lots and lots of information. And so we thought this was a really, really high value opportunity to create additional revenue, because every time the RPA system broke, which still took a lot of people to maintain, there was a fee for every time we had to have someone make a call on a customer's behalf, which was getting expensive and cutting into the margins. And so first thing we did was a real quick proof of concept. So we came up with a couple of, hypothetical phone trees that we had to get through that represented like base use cases. And we used an open source model. It was Distilbert. And we took our data, and we didn't bother too much with data cleaning or any of that, because we weren't going to actually distribute this model in production. We just wanted to very quickly demonstrate value, because lots of AI use cases sound great and can be great, but are they going to deliver on the value, and are they going to deliver the value in such a time that it's worth making the investment into? And so we had looked in the market to see if there was anything third party, decided that it wasn't at the stage that we were going to go with one of those options. And so we decided to build one internally. We built it, and for the initial couple use cases we looked at, we were able to get some traction and get good enough results that we thought there was some signal there. And I want to be really clear so people aren't discouraged, because you listen to podcasts or famous people talk about AI or some guy in a suit on LinkedIn. They're always like, this was amazing, we made millions of dollars. That's not what reality looks like as you're building these. You need enough signal to know whether something is worth looking in and know how much time you're willing to invest in it to get to the next stage gate of determining, do I stop the project, do I scale the project, or do I just productionalize and maintain the project? And so our first signal, it was, I don't know, like 50% success getting to the end of the transcript. That wasn't a lot. It was just enough for us to know that, hey, if there are 14 steps and half the time we get to the end and we haven't done material data cleaning, there's something here we can work with. And so by the time and keep in mind that this is a fully automated thing, that every time we do this, we save $1, and you can horizontally scale as far as you would like. This and just giving away a spoiler at the end, at the moment, I believe it's making low seven-figure financial impact annually now in production. And so the next stage was data cleaning. So we data cleaning and anonymization. So removing all that PII, removing any potential PHI or people who had said credit card information, and coming up with an approved list of methodologies that we are confident would remove that, because we wouldn't want the model accidentally retaining that information. Then we productionalized the cleaning pipeline. So we had all of our information go through that. And then we had a feedback loop where we actually worked with SMEs who were giving feedback on the quality of the results that were put out. And by the time I left the organization, it had like a 70-ish% success rate, which still is not perfect, but the goal of AI tools isn't necessarily perfect. It's what is the value of it. And this was millions of value. And the current system, because I'm still in touch with the people that are building it out, is they actually will have prioritized human-in-the-loop feedback. And so the next day, some of the SMEs that used to just be doing these calls are going through and telling the AI model what to do next. So there is a pre-programmed known, like kind of like an RPA clone that is generated by the AI model that is like a backup pass. And so between the two of those, you end up having a lot higher success, and you have one of the greatest goals of AI, people's time being used much better. And so the things that I hope people hear from this are, one, it doesn't need to be perfect to start. Two, I had stages along the way to show value. Three, it didn't have to get to 100% to be something that I'm materially proud of. And four, it had people use their time better. And just because you produce something as well, like just because the current state is really valuable doesn't mean you won't have another stage in a year that'll make it even better, or maybe even find a new value proposition. And so every journey is different, but constantly thinking about your resource utilization. So sorry that was such a long answer.
Oh, thank you for that. That was a very interesting answer. And one of the things that was inside that, you went over it pretty quickly, was there was a moment when you were making an assessment about whether just to take something off the shelf. There were some solutions that you considered, and then you decided, no, they were not ready. And so you went ahead and built it, and then the story continued from there. So that's actually a familiar moment in a lot of these journeys. What we face is this build versus buy. So can you unwrap that a little bit further? What kinds of factors help you to choose one of those two options over the other based on the nature of the problem you're solving?
Absolutely. So the main one is, who are you as a company, or who are you as a team? It's really easy to say, well, I could spend $1 million a year on this tool and I'd have it now, Or I could have three people doing this and it would only cost me $600,000 a year. But is that how you want your resources spending your time? Um, is this who you want your organization, your team, or your broader organization, whatever it is, to be? Is that what you want them truly focused on? I want my resources focused on the things that have the biggest impact and the things that are absolutely the most core to my organization. The leak detection thing is one of the core products for all of Fortune brands. The customer insights, it's not who I want our people to be, but it gives us such deep and the exact insights that my category managers are interested in for thousands of products. It changes our ways of working and helps us really understand what our customers are saying. And because it can scale horizontally, I'm comfortable with the level of investment it takes to maintain it. So cost, does it justify the time? Is it a strategic differentiator where it'll make your business so different? If it's something someone else isn't going to build the same way, is 80% good enough? Because usually it is. Additionally, a lot of us think, oh, it'll take 6 months to build, but maintenance is forever. Do you want to be maintaining this? Is that worth the time and the resources? Additionally, all of us saw ChatGPT in November of 2022 and thought, okay, this is useful. I see where there are some improvements that are needed. This isn't perfect. I can see where this could be helpful. And now GPT-4 and GPT-4o and Mini, we're seeing, okay, it's really accelerated along the way, and we're starting to see models that are customized for specific use cases. Do you want to be the team accountable and responsible for maintaining the product of whatever the AI function fits in and the AI model itself? And a lot of the times, and argue most of the time, you don't want to be. I would much prompt engineering around a lot of these other models is just so useful and helpful that obviously super use case dependent, but often the answer is no. That isn't how you want to spend your time or how you want to invest your resources. For me, it always comes back to what is the most important thing to accomplish and what do I want my resources focused on. So those are the factors I tend to consider.
hmm And you were just talking just now about time and resources, and you've mentioned resources a couple of times. And so I wonder if you could describe, in fact, that team that you're leading. What kinds of qualifications do people need to have to be part of a team like yours?
Um, I'll answer two questions because I think it's worth pointing out the difference. My team has a number of data scientists of various levels of seniority, but we also have some people that are involved with data quality and data annotation. That way, our most expensive resources aren't being spent on tasks that a less expensive, not necessarily less intelligent, but less expensive with a different skill set and potentially offshore resource could be focused on. So my team happens to be a little more PhD focused, but as someone who has a PhD and an MBA, I want to say I do not at all think you need a PhD in order to be a good data scientist for most use cases. If you are developing the next generation of transformer models, yeah, you probably have a PhD in that. But for so many data science and AI applications, you can be an amazing, powerful, contributing, important member of the team without fancy academic pedigree. That isn't what I think has helped me or my team along the way. I have a PhD in math, one guy on the team has a PhD in physics, another is in supply chain. It's completely different. The skills that I do care about, and these skills don't always translate well to a resume. Um, uh, Communication. I need you, I don't care what level of seniority you are, to be able to talk to people, because if you can't appreciate the problem and you can't have exchange with a product person about what we as a team are trying to accomplish, then you can't produce what our internal or external customer needs. And then your additional management weight on me or someone else on the team. Second, a product value mindset. So communication is the ability for the information to be exchanged. The product value mindset is a lot of data scientists, a lot of people in data and analytics get caught up in this is my chunk of the world. I build models. I clean data. My metric is root mean squared error. I'm going to make this metric as absolutely small as possible. And once I get to a number that doesn't change, then I'm done. That is a challenging and problematic way to approach the world because sometimes you'll spend an additional 2 weeks on an incremental impact that doesn't impact the end customer. Additionally, you might be building a model on a feature that isn't producing the value that the product you're building requires. I had a chief digital officer at WEX who actually had us do an exercise called Move the Needle. It's a company that will come out. And I highly recommend everyone thinking about this because if you can talk and use this language, this is the sort of stuff in your day-to-day job and in your interviews that will make you stand out. She had an example where it's going to cost, this is a long time ago obviously, like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to translate a website to Spanish. But instead, she put a Se habla español button somewhere and looked for a month, and only 2 people clicked on it when they had hundreds of thousands of visitors. And they learned that it wasn't going to be worth the investment. So understanding what your customer really wants and what the product really is. Sometimes on the catastrophic leak detection project, we end up in conversations about identifying, let's say your toilet flapper is broken or something like that. Yeah, that's a leak. Yeah, we'd like to fix it, and it's something for us to keep in mind, but it's not the core value proposition. If the water isn't falling on the floor, your home is still safe, even though it's an inefficient use of water, but a different model should be showing that, not your my home is going to get destroyed model. Let's identify it and protect you. And so, summarizing, communication, product value. Third, can you be someone who people want to work with you? Do you have a culture and mindset of accountability? This doesn't mean saying, oh, other team member needs to do this. They haven't done it yet. That means that you have an investment in the product, the team, and you are doing what you can to help us collaboratively succeed, even if it's a little bit outside the scope of your core job description or core work function. Those are the people that make the biggest difference. And it's really, when you talk to people for long enough, you start to see who they are and who they aren't. Getting into the technical stuff, which is I'm sure what you originally were asking about, Jim, my team is not working on really, really niche parallelized computing resources where we need any of the C languages or Go or Rust or anything like that. Python and SQL. So in my interviews, I don't do any gotchas. I am not trying to trick you. I will try to understand your core skills. These skills that you should have been, if you're a senior role, you've been using for years. I want to see that you really, really understand them. Or maybe I'll ask a weird question about a fundamental concept, and it's not a trick. And I'll say, hey, I know this is weird. I just kind of want to chat to see what you think. And we end up getting into the pros and cons of different options. And so can you use Python well, SQL well? And Python, that's such a vague thing. Pandas, do you know sklearn? I'll talk, one of my favorite things to talk about in interviews is data cleaning. Because in all the certification camps people go through, you end up, neural networks and dropout and the latest in transformers, but that's not where you're spending most of your time. You're spending your time thinking about, and one of the issues I have with a lot of those data science toolkits they're selling is like, oh, we'll do your data cleaning for you. It's like, you can't. You don't know what problem I'm trying to do. data being clean isn't really a thing. Data being curated for the particular use case is the thing.
You're listening to the AI Master Group podcast.
Data being clean isn't really a thing. Data being curated for the particular use case is the thing. And so if I talk with you, I say, okay, I'm building a fraud detection model, which is an imbalance class because people rarely commit fraud, and I'm building this sort of model. What are some of the data cleaning things I need to think about? Then we're really, really diving in. And so those are some of the questions I like to talk about. Diving deep into the product, not just product value. One of the things I'd want to talk about is, okay, here's where we're at with the product under the hood and where we're at. What are your next thoughts? What are the practical implications that you need to be thinking about? Not just a data science model. This is a product we have built. If it's the leak detection device, what customer experiences should we be thinking about as a result? I want you thinking about how the app works too, because I've literally sat with our designers for the app and said, no, we need this differently because I'm prioritizing my ability to gain the training data that I need while not impacting customer protection. At WEX, we had some fraud detection models, and I was really thinking about how do we balance financial impact if a fraudster gets a credit card when they shouldn't have versus the customer experience of a false rejection versus our potential reputational hit if we were denying too many customers. That's what makes you a great data scientist. It's not just these models, it's understanding how to really make that value, and it goes so far beyond. And so getting these skills, and in a resume, what that looks like is I did XYZ. It's thinking about this funnel, the input, output, outcome, impact. So for example, I built, a lot of people will say, built fraud detection model. Lots of people can do lots of things. I have no idea if it's good or not. But if you say built a fraud detection model that reduced fraudulent credit card applications by 17%, saving $1.8 million annually, I know you know how to think. Theoretically, you can make up all of those numbers, but what it does is every line on your resume is the advertisement proving that you understand the technologies, you understand the product, you understand the company, and you understand the value. And so what I can do is say, tell me about this, and then you'll give your high-level overview. Then I'll say, why did you do that? And then you'll talk about the problem that was happening and what you did to solve it and why that solved the problem. And sometimes people will say, oh, increase this by 30%. Sometimes, I don't know, 30 be amazing or it could be terrible, but you can get into why everything matters. And so having that balance of things helps me see all of the other things. Because if you understand the product, you can end up talking about the technical aspect because that is the mechanism by which you delivered the true value. And if you know the technical stuff, you can have built the technical stuff showing you understand the problem. And so the people that can do all of those are the ones who get ahead in life. And it's not always the people with the PhDs, because sometimes they just know their specific problem. There are people in great teams involve people with complementary skill sets. So some, maybe their communication isn't tip-top, but they really know the product and they want to help out. But others are really great with the stakeholders and they can guide those, working together. And so showing that you excel at enough of that. Oh, and then the last thing, showing that you are the person who will make sure what needs to happen happens. in my early days, and I want to share like a moment of vulnerability because it's hard, particularly in the job climate at the moment. I didn't have technical skills because I had a theoretical math background going in, and so I ended up on a PIP, which is one of the best performance improvement plan, because I was put on a project where I needed to code, and I had told them I don't know how to code. So it went very poorly. Um, but I ended up in a situation where I had the fostering and the mentorship that I didn't even know that I needed, and I came out of it with a very good humbled attitude, and so um, really working to make sure whatever needs to get done gets done is what makes not just you successful, but makes managers have trust in you because managers have collections of problems and things they're working on. They need to be able to write some of them off the list. So if you can have that trust, that'll not just help you be a great data scientist or whatever role you are, but a great team member and a great employee. So that went a little off subject, but yeah.
That is great. It was really interesting. You unwrapped that. You're right. You unwrapped that further than I was expecting, but it was really amazing and very interesting. One of the things that you mentioned in your conversation just now was about an expectation that the people working on a project are already thinking about what the next thing is, and you described that in terms of percentages or iterations or maybe the future direction. And picking up on that, I'm wondering what you're thinking in your role at One Level Up is are there any technologies that you have on your radar that you think might have potential value for consumers or even for the staff there at Fortune Brands in the future?
Yeah. Um, Obligatory, all the large language model, content generation, video generation, audio, sound, all that jazz. Everyone knows that, so it's not worth talking about. So I'll focus on two others. Um, if First is causal inference. So a lot of data science work is predictive. It tells you that given a situation, this is what will happen, which is super valuable and what I think all of us were kind of trained on. But it's so confusing to me. Why? That's definitely the first step. But once you have the information about what's going to happen, the natural next thing is, well, I want something different to happen. How do I change it? And we say, I don't know, causation correlation issue. Whereas there's a whole branch of statistics and data science that the statistics are further along. The data scientists are working on it called causal inference, which prescribes an action and gives you a quantitative estimate of the impact if you give an associated behavior. And so that's something we're really looking at for e-commerce and supply chain and a whole bunch of other things because we want to know what to do in this next situation. And so it's an area I am particularly excited about. My boss, the head of data analytics, is very excited about, and some of the members of my team. Another one is digital twin. And so what this is a simulation of a physical system or a population or a collection of whatever the thing is. And it's a really, really cool technology that's newer to me even. It's something that is really important for supply chain because you can do some scenario-based modeling. You can use it in manufacturing for your actual physical systems on factory floor. It's also used very extensively recently for the American political elections, trying to simulate. Polls are useful because it lets you know what people think, but simulations representing did people who have these feelings actually go out and vote is really, really powerful because it answers the question you're really trying to get at. Is the outcome not just a sentiment about it? And not trying to get into any sort of political stuff, but the efficacy is really there. Let's say you want to ask about you have a new company motto. Well, you could go and say, well, we're primarily targeting men aged 40 to 50, but I also care about what other people think, and I want to know variety across the world. It's very hard to do that because you have to get people of all of those different groups to come in, have a sufficient sample size for the average to have confidence intervals you expect. Whereas what you can do is you have like a more generative style digital twin and have a sufficient group of these basically agents who represent people of different backgrounds, and then you can ask them questions, and it takes seconds to respond. You instead of taking months to get results and have it be very expensive, you can get answers in a matter of hours, and you can ask as many nuanced questions about as many of the mottos as you'd like, and this is just the beginning of the story with digital twin. It's just the beginning of the story with causal inference. I think these will be skills that lots more data scientists get involved with in the coming years, and I think they're definitely something, particularly causal inference, that people will invest in. So I'm excited for those.
I am too. That was great, Zach. I really appreciate this. I've learned so much from you and a lot of different dimensions, and especially those questions where you unwrapped even further. So thank you so much for that. I have one last question for you. If somebody wants to get in touch with you to discuss any of these topics or AI strategy or share ideas, how can they do that?
LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out. I do some light consulting work. I'm also just kind of happy to talk with peers and other organizations about AI strategy, AI use cases, coming up with AI governance, how to also, sometimes it's just nice to have a peer who's been through it before and how to get people on board this journey. It's really intimidating to think, how do I get people excited about a vastly evolving technology? So if you need someone to talk to, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat with people, and it's fun to see what others are up to as well. I have enjoyed that at the conference, which is how Jim and I met, and I regularly chat with people on LinkedIn. So that would be a great way to reach out to me.
Once again, thank you very much. This has been amazing.
Jim, thanks for having me. It was fun to get into all that.
You've been listening to the AI Master Group Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Griffin. Until next time, stay curious and stay in front.